Hello and a very warm welcome to the brand new edition of To The Point. I'm Kriti Mishra. And on today's show, we have with us Dr. Jitendra Singh, MoS, PMO, donor, DoPT, Atomic Energy, and Department of Space. Dr. Singh, welcome to Rajya Television and thank you so much for joining us in this era of social distancing. We are connecting you through Skype.
Thank you, Kriti.
Right, sir. So first, let's talk about DoPT. And of course, we have millions of our viewers who are UPSC aspirants. We understand that the UPSC exams have just been postponed and not cancelled. A bit of clarity from you would be much appreciated.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad you asked that, Kriti, because of course the youngsters are always anxious about it, and obviously so because the aspirants are always keen to perform their best, and many of them, the more studious ones amongst them particularly, always tend to make a kind of a timetable for themselves for the preparation of the exam, which is a very coveted exam for them. But as all of us know, under these conditions, in lockdown conditions, it was not have been possible to go ahead with it. But nevertheless, we have been receiving a number of queries, as you rightly said, through different platforms and through different modes of communication. Now, there are two parts to it as far as the civil service exam is concerned. As far as the finals are concerned, we were already into the personality test, the final part of it, which also includes interview, etc. But we had to defer it because of the sudden emergence of this COVID crisis. And that is one aspect. The other aspect is the holding of the preliminary exam, because that also is held during this, around this season every year. But now we have always, in fact, we have already clarified it through the print media as well, but it's good that you have given an opportunity to read through your medium, because many of these youngsters are more comfortable and more accessible by the electronic modes of communication. We will take a call after 3rd of May, in a nutshell to say, because obviously it can't be done now. And neither me nor anybody else in the department would be able to actually give enough dates that would be scheduled. That will all depend upon how the lockdown phase goes ahead and how it phases out actually. But nevertheless, after 3rd of May, already issued a circular as far as the civil service exams are concerned, which include the IAS exams, which also include the Indian engineering services exams, etc., etc. And soon thereafter, about 2 days back, the Staff Selection Commission,
Yes.
the SSC, also has issued a similar circular clarifying that they would take a call after the 3rd of May. So let me also assure through you aspirants that they would be given adequate time to prepare themselves. And we also understand the constraint of many of them to travel from one place to the other, and sometimes they have to cover a long distance of an exam at a given center. So considering all those constraints, we would certainly give them sufficient time to be ready for the exam and also to make themselves available for writing the exam.
So that is the biggest takeaway, Dr. Singh, that sufficient time would be given to all the aspirants, whether SSC or UPSC.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we are as much concerned about their career and their aspiration as they are. But I also appreciate, I understand the kind of sensitivity with which they have been actually flooding the social media. But as all of us understand, I don't think it will be possible to give a categorical tentative date right now. But soon we will take a call. We are already cautious of it. We are seized of this matter. So
Right.
also the UPSC and the SSC.
Right, sir. Absolutely. Point well taken. But moving on, there are several reports floating that the pensioners' pension would be slashed.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because this morning also this issue came up. I don't know how it's coming up even. I don't know whether it is by design or by mischief or by ignorance or by default, because I don't wish to get into that kind of a debate. It's unfortunate because at no point, at no time was this ever contemplated at any level in the government of India. We are concerned about the sensitivity and the requirement of the pensioners and the elder citizens. And I don't know how this rumor and this kind of news, which sometimes is described as a fake news, got circulated that there would be a 30% cut. They even mentioned the exact figure, which I'm amazed. They are such good inventors. even in inventing a fake news. They mentioned the exact figure of 30%, which would be the cutoff of the pension to be deducted from each of the pensioners. And one of the news also went to the extent of very insensitively mentioning that those above the age of 80 would be deprived of the pension altogether. I felt hurt to read that, because this is not a government as insensitive as some people believe it to be. We understand the requirement, the concerns, and the needs of the elderly citizens of that age, 80 plus and octogenarians, and we can't be that insensitive to deprive them of the pension and leave them to their fate. So I wish once again through your medium to reiterate, we've already retweeting it through the print media as well today, that there is no such move to in fact interfere with the pension mechanism as it exists today. On the contrary, I would use this opportunity to add over here that we made sure at the turn of the month that all the pensioners would get their monthly pension deposited in time in their respective bank accounts. And when we went one step further, we sought the services of the postal department and requested them, and I'm glad that they heeded to our request, that the post office personnel could go up to the houses of the elderly pensioners to deliver the pension or the amount of pension after getting it encashed either through the post office or their account, so that they don't have to undertake the botheration of venturing out during the lockdown period. So we have been actually walking extra mile. Now the third part of it also, which I think we exceeded our mandate, because the pension department per se deals only with the welfare of the pension, the facilitating of the pension deposit, etc., etc. But soon after this lockdown was announced, within 1 week, we held a mega video conferencing meeting where we got connected with 20 cities in India, beginning down south from Chennai, from Bengaluru, then going up north up to Mohali, Chandigarh, Jammu, then after Jammu to Jaipur, to Pune, to Mumbai. And we were trying to clarify or respond to all their queries, all their doubts, all their concerns, particularly in the aftermath of the lockdown. And as I said, we exceeded our mandate to offer our services and to reiterate our commitment towards them. We also had, besides us during that video conference meeting, none less than Dr. Randeep Guleria, who happens to be the director of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi, and incidentally also one of the leading experts of pulmonary medicine in India,
Yes.
which is the specialty of medicine dealing with the corona infection and the lung infection resulting from it. So that those of the elder citizens who had certain medical related queries or clinical related queries about corona could also be satisfied. So let me once again reassure you that we would always be doing more than what is expected of us for the benefit and for the service of the elder citizens of this country, who today form a huge chunk. In fact, for the first time now, we have the number of pensioners which exceeds the number of employees, regular employees in the government of India.
Absolutely, sir. So that is a very important point that you're making, that there is no proposal to deduct the pensions of pensioners. But moving on, sir, there was an e-platform that was much talked about of DoPT for the frontline warriors of COVID-19. What is the platform and how are you connecting it to people?
No, I'm glad you asked that, because maybe it still requires to be further publicized. We already had an iGot platform which we had floated rather recently, in very recent months, which offered a platform to the officers, particularly the IAS officers, to upgrade themselves, to update themselves. It was meant for capacity building. It was also meant to provide specific inputs and specific kind of expertise depending upon the nature of task or the nature of new assignment that an IAS officer would take after he undergoes a change of his position or office or a transfer. But in the wake of the corona epidemic or pandemic, it occurred to us that we would now devote all our energy and our time and all our resources to conquer this pandemic. And that was the only humble way we could actually offer our contribution to the war that has been undertaken, led by Prime Minister Modi. So we introduced an online COVID awareness course on this, and I'm glad on the very first day itself, because we started just about a few days back. On the very first day, we had hundreds of officers registering themselves on it. So it caters to, and the other benefit of it would be, it would not only awareness for their consumption, but it would also prepare them to help others. In other words, we would be preparing what you describe these days popularly as Corona warriors from
Yes.
among the IAS officers and among the bureaucrats.
Right, sir. But talking about the central government departments, sir, we understand that the ministers have been working. But now that all of you have joined office, what kind of security or the safety measures that you're applying and ensuring that all the officers adhere to?
I think one of the measures that is being observed is obvious from the interview that we are going through right now. We are virtually seeing each other, not actually seeing each other.
Yes.
And in the office work also, most of the times we try to conduct ourselves through electronic means. And we are having regular meetings, I would not say that. But of course, observing the discipline of the social distancing as well as the discipline of the limit of numbers of person to be available in a room at a given time, and then we connect with others through video conferencing. I am also glad to say that most of our work has already got transferred to e-file. In fact, one of the departments of the ministries which I look after happens to be the Ministry for Development of Northeastern Region, or DONE. Incidentally, that was the first ministry way back which went totally e-file. That was about 3 years or so back. Because we also had the urgency of doing so, because we have our headquarters of the Northeastern Council in Shillong, and therefore we were having problems in the delay of disposal of important files, in the delay of the submission of DPRs, in the delay of clearance of DPRs, in the delay of procurement of utilization certificate. So we had already gone e-file, electronic, and therefore it didn't actually make much of a difference to us. We had already used to that kind of working. And so also in the Ministry of Personnel. I'm glad that almost 3/4 of the ministries in the Government of India, of course at the behest of the DoPT, had already switched over maximally to about 70% of work on the e-file, even before this corona epidemic took over.
Right, sir. Absolutely. But, sir, since we understand that we're working with skeletal staff everywhere, work from home is the new norm, it is in vogue. What would be the guidelines on appraisal now?
No, of course, see, the security, the safety of each one of us and each individual is the prime concern. Whether we sit at home, or in the office, but at the same time, the show must go on, and the show has to go on. Somebody has to bell the cat, and somebody has to take the lead. If all of us then allow the office doors to be shut down, it won't actually send out a message of reassurance. And I'm glad from tomorrow, following the example of DoPT, some other states and union territories are also going to follow us. One of them, of course, happens to be the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, which is also resuming its offices from the 20th of April. And of course, observing the norms that we do even otherwise while working from home, which includes the use of face masks, the frequent sanitization, etc., which I don't need to repeat, I think we could carry on with a certain discipline.
Dr. Singh, you represent J&K, UT of J&K as your parliamentary constituency. Tell us about the preparedness of J&K to combat COVID-19.
No, I think as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, this is one of the territories which is going to emerge out as one of the best performing as far as the COVID challenge is concerned. I have to compliment the UT government there. They were very preemptive. In fact, they had shut down their health clubs and gym centers long before the lockdown happened. They were quite preemptive about it. They were quite strict about it. To begin with, of course, it was obvious there were problems in eliciting cooperation from people, because people did not actually understand the seriousness of it or what it was all about. And since over the last 30 years, Jammu and Kashmir had gone through a long spell of militancy, so they took this lockdown or something like a military curfew, and they would try to sneak out, try to dodge the security forces. and come out. But then gradually, as the awareness spread, they could realize that, look here, this is not a police curfew. This is a curfew which is self-imposed for our own self. So if we even try to bluff the police, bluffing them, we would actually be bluffing ourselves. And now I'm glad that the lockdown has been so effective that we have women folk coming out on the roads and carrying sticks and warning youngsters from loitering around. Even in the more sensitive districts, where the corona risk was a little on the higher side. Like, for example, one of them was the district Rajouri, where the first Tablighi case was detected, who later died in the Srinagar hospital, and he belonged to a village called Manjakot in the district. The second district was Udhampur, and third Bandipora. In districts like Udhampur, where we had to do a huge scale, a very massive scale of screening. I would not say mass screening, because in clinical terms, mass screening means testing each individual, which was not feasible at that time, though now the rapid acting kits are also being made available. But there, even the small little lanes and streets interconnecting the panchayats and the villages were found deserted. So much was the level of cooperation by the civil society. And I think this produces a perfect example of an ideal coordination between the civil society, the civil administration, and the police authorities. We have 6 districts out of 20 districts in Jammu Kashmir which have not reported a single corona positive right from the beginning. And the more sensitive ones, as I mentioned, 3 of them are gradually wriggling out of it. Bandipura still has some of the reports pending, but Udhampur, I think, will be soon out of it. Rajouri were almost settled, except that we had another positive report yesterday, because that was among the awaited persons. I have to compliment also the people of Jammu and Kashmir, particularly the border district of Kathuga, which is bordering Pathankot, because soon after the lockdown was declared of a sudden, and from on the intervening night of 24th and 25th, there was an influx of people, more than 4,000 people stuck up in that small town. Some of them trying to travel and make their way from Punjab towards Jammu and further on to Srinagar. The other ones trying to go the other way around. And since the quarantine had to be observed and everybody had to be asked to stay in situ, that is where, as is where is, principle. So all of them got stuck up, and the people very cooperative to arrange for the quarantine, to arrange for their hospitality, food. And therefore, I think to a great extent, Jammu Kashmir has been able to live up to this challenge in a very commendable manner. At the same time, they have been also quick to follow the guidelines very strictly, as and when they were issued by the Government of India. Now, for example, we were now talking about DoPT, and we were also talking about the various departments affiliated with the Ministry of Personnel. I left out mentioning that in the Department of Administrative Reforms, we have a CP Gram portal for the grievances, as all of us know. You also know very well, because you've been covering us for such a long time. So in that portal, we introduced an exclusive window for COVID, so that anybody who has a corona-related or a COVID-related grievance would enter into that portal, file that, and immediately it will get collected. And the disposal time on an average has been just about 1.5 days, and we have till now disposed of, or at least around 10,000 grievances or so. And I'm glad that Jammu Kashmir also was quick to pick up the same kind of a practice and introduce a similar kind of grievance cell over there as well.
Right, sir. And talking about the northeastern region, sir, you've gone on record to say that COVID-related health projects will get a priority in financial sanctions for the northeastern region. But we also saw that they had to endure racial slurs amid this outbreak of pandemic. How do we change the mindset?
Yeah, I think to begin with, I must compliment my colleagues in the Ministry of Northeast and the donor. We were very quick to understand that we would have to exclusively deal or address ourselves to the COVID challenge for quite a few weeks to come. And therefore, our mandate, even though was to focus on the infrastructure projects, we took upon ourselves that hereafter, for the next few weeks or so, even much before the lockdown was announced, we decided and we took upon ourselves that we would exclusively devote our energies, our resources, our money to the care and control of COVID, though we were not a health-related ministry. So we thought of the best way that we could do it. And what we did was that we have, for example, a scheme called NESID, Northeast Infrastructure Development Scheme, NESIDS. And in that scheme, under that scheme, we have a category for the health-related projects, and we advised all these, that carries a budget of more than 500 crore or so. So we advised all the 8 states of Northeast that if you come out with proposals related to corona-related problems, we would fund that on priority, and we would consider that as your health sector investment. And I'm glad that many of the states are very quick to come forward. Mizoram, for example, came forward. Manipur wants an infectious diseases hospital to be set up, because I'm glad that in the learning from the lesson of the COVID experience, we would be able to build an infrastructure to treat the infectious disease or their epidemics if these happen in the future as well. Meghalaya has also come up with a proposal. Similarly, to begin with, without any conditions, we placed an amount of rupees 25 crore at the first instance at the disposal of the northeastern states. And of course, the maximum amount of that was to be utilized by the state of Assam, because that was the state which initially faced the brunt of the corona positive cases, because all these foreign travelers actually were moving into Assam because of its close connectivity with the rest of India. And the first death also happened in Silchar in Assam. The other death later was unfortunately of a medical professional in Meghalaya. But by and large, most of the other states could contain the spread of corona. And I'm glad that some of these states, like for example Sikkim, do not have a single corona positive.
Yes.
And I must compliment Honorable Prime Minister, his intervention and his encouragement. We were able to take some preemptive decisions, like for example the sealing of 5,500 kilometer long border along the northeast, because northeast is bordering with Bangladesh, bordering with Myanmar, bordering with Bhutan, with Nepal. And one reason I feel why Sikkim has not had a single corona positive is because the Nepal border was sealed in very early phase. So even though by our lifestyle and culture we have a porous border, particularly with Myanmar, and there's also provision of people moving to and fro in a 20-kilometer distance, etc. But all this was very religiously observed. And northeastern states like Manipur, like Meghalaya, were amongst the first to introduce that concept of putting that rounds, which were now later on followed by the rest of India and the other states as well, for social distancing purposes when they were going to a grocery shop or an essential item. At the same time, with the intervention of Honorable Prime Minister, because right from 2014, Prime Minister Modi had said that we would bring Northeast at par with the rest of the India or rest of the more developed states of India. And I think we have retreated our resolve through this crisis that Northeast, along with Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh, and the island territories, was among the areas which, on the behest of Honorable Prime Minister, was given a prioritization in carrying air cargo. So maximum amount of air cargo supplies have reached Northeast. They have reached, of course, Ladakh, because these were the two areas which were facing constraints of accessibility. And thereafter, of course, Srinagar and Jammu have been receiving, the Jammu, of course, also receiving the road transport of the essential supplies, which was permitted from day one. And of course, the parcel train express has also been introduced now, not only for Jammu, but also for Guwahati in Assam. So I'm glad that these peripheral areas were given prioritization, which is in keeping with the policy and approach that Prime Minister Modi and his government has followed ever since 2014. We said we would go by the requirement of the region. We will try to make up for the lapses of the past. We would not go by any considerations whatsoever. And even this moment of crisis, that resolve has been reiterated in a manner that we could actually get over this crisis to a great extent, if not fully as of today.
Absolutely, sir. Let's keep our fingers crossed that we get over this crisis as soon as possible and put up a united front. Dr. Singh, thank you so much for joining us on Rajya Sabha Television and giving those
Kriti,
useful insights. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot.